Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Book 11, Story 2, Lovesick Monk. Sirima, the story goes, was a very beautiful courtesan of Rajagar, who had during a certain rainy season offended against the female lay disciple Uttara, wife of the treasurer's son Sumana and daughter of the treasurer Punyaka. Desiring to be on good terms with her again, she went to her house when the teacher and the congregation of monks were within, and after the teacher had finished his meal, asked him for pardon. Now, on that day he that is possessed of the 10 powers pronounced within the hearing of Sirima the following words of thanksgiving. One should overcome anger with kindness. One should overcome evil with good. One should overcome the niggard with gifts, and the speaker of falsehood with truth. At the conclusion of this stanza, Sirima obtained the fruit of conversion. Having thus attained the fruit of conversion, Sirima invited the possessor of the 10 powers to be her guest, and on the following day presented rich offerings. From that time on, she gave regularly the 8 ticket foods, and from that time on 8 months came regularly to her house. Except ghee, except milk, she would say, filling their bowls. What she gave to one monk would have sufficed for 3 or 4. Every day 16 pieces of money were expended on the alms, which were presented to the monks who visited her house. Now, one day a certain monk who had eaten the 8 ticket foods in her house went a journey of 3 leagues and stopped at a certain monastery. In the evening, as he sat in the monastery, the monks asked him, "Brother, where did you obtain food just before you came here?" "I have just eaten Srima's 8 ticket foods." "Is the food which she gives pleasing to the taste, brother?" "It is impossible to describe her food. It is the choicest of choice food that she gives, but a single portion would suffice, even for 3 or 4. But good as her food is, she herself is still more pleasing to look upon. Such and such are the marks of beauty which she possesses." Thus did the monk describe her good qualities. A certain monk heard the visiting monk describe her good qualities, and in spite of the fact that he had never seen her, nevertheless fell in love with her. Said he to himself, I ought to go see her. So announcing that he was about to enter upon residence, he asked the monk who lived by her arms some questions. The visiting monk replied, Tomorrow, brother, remain in that house, assume the post of elder of the assembly, and you will receive the 8 ticket fruits. The monk immediately took bowl and robe and went out. Early in the morning, as the dawn rose, he entered the ticket hall, assumed the post of elder of the assembly, and received the 8 ticket fruits in the woman's house. Now it so happened that on the day before, just as the monk who had received food in her house went out, the female lay disciple became afflicted with the disease, and therefore removed her jewels and lay down. When the monks came to receive the 8 ticket foods, her female slaves, seeing them, informed their mistress. Since she was unable to take their bowls in her own hands, provide them with seats and wait upon them. She gave orders to her slaves, saying, Women, take the bowls and provide the noble monks with seats. Give them broth to drink and hard food to eat. When it is time to present boiled rice, fill their bowls and give them to the monks. Very well, noble lady, replied the slaves. So they invited the monks within, gave them broth to drink and hard food to eat. And when it was time to present boiled rice, they filled their bowls and gave them to the monks. When they had so done, they went and informed their mistress. Said she, Take me and carry me with you, that I may pay my respects to the noble monks. So they took her and carried her with them. And when they brought her into the presence of the monks, she paid obeisance to them. Her body, all of her trembled. When that monk looked upon her, he thought to himself, even in sickness, this woman possesses wonderful beauty. What manner of beauty must she not possess when she is well and strong and adorned with all her adornments? Thereupon, human passion, accumulated during many millions of years, arose within him. He became indifferent to all about him and was unable to take food. He took his bowl and went back to the monastery. Covering his bowl, he put it away. Then he lay down, spreading out the skirt of his robe. A certain monk, who was a companion of his, tried to persuade him to eat, but without success, for he refused absolutely to take food. On that very day in the evening, Srima died. Thereupon the king sent word to the teacher, Reverend Sir, Jivaka's younger sister Srima is dead. When the teacher received that message, he sent back the following message to the king. Srima's body should not be burned. Have her body laid in the burning ground, and set a watch, that crows and dogs may not devour it. The king did so. 3 days passed, one after another. On the 4th day, the body began to bloat, and from the 9 openings of her body, which were like to sores, there oozed forth maggots. Her whole body looked like a cracked vessel of boiled rice. The king caused the drum to go through the city, and the following proclamation to be made. Let all approach to behold Srima, except watchmen of houses. All who refuse to do so shall be fined 8 pieces of money. And he sent the following message to the teacher. Let the congregation of monks, presided over by the Buddha, approach to behold Srima. The teacher made proclamation to the monks. Let us go forth to behold Srima. Now that the young monk had lain for 4 days without touching food, paying no attention to anything anyone said to him, the rice in his bowl had rotted, and his bowl was covered with mildew. The rest of the monks who were his fellows approached him and said to him, Brother, the teacher is going forth to behold Srima. When the young monk, lying thus, heard the name Srima, he leaped quickly to his feet. Someone said to him, The teacher is going forth to behold Srima. Will you also go? Indeed, I will go, he replied. And tossing the rice out of his bowl, he washed it and put it in his net, and then set out with a company of monks. The teacher, surrounded by the congregation of monks, stood on one side of the corpse. The congregation of nuns and the king's retinue and the company of lay disciples, both male and female, stood on the other side of the corpse, each company in its proper place. The teacher then asked the king, Great king, who is this woman? Reverend sir, it is Jivaka's sister, Srima. Is this Srima? Yes, Reverend sir. Well, send a drum through the town and make proclamation. Those who will pay 1,000 pieces of money for Srima may have her. Not a man said, aham. The king informed the teacher, They will not take her, Reverend sir. Well then, great king, put the price down. So the king had a drum beaten, and the following proclamation made. If they will give 500 pieces of money, they may have her. But nobody would take her at that price. The king then proclaimed to the beating of a drum that anyone might have her who would give her 250 pieces of money, or 200, or 100, or 50, or 25, or 10, or 5. Finally, he reduced the price to a penny, then to a half penny, then to a quarter of a penny, then to an eighth of a penny. At last he proclaimed to the beating of a drum, "They may have her for nothing." Not a man said, "Hum" or "hum." Then said the king to the teacher, "Reverend sir, no one will take her even as a gift." The teacher replied, "Monks, you see the value of a woman in the eyes of the multitude. In this very city, men used to pay 1,000 pieces of money for the privilege of spending one night with this woman. Now there is no one who will take her as a gift. Such was her beauty, who now has perished and gone. Behold, monks, this body diseased and corrupt." So saying, he pronounced the following stanza. Behold this beautiful body, a mass of sauce, a heaped up lump diseased, much thought of, in which nothing lasts, nothing persists. Dhammapada Stories, Part 2, Book 11, Story 5. Janapada, Kalyani, Rupananda. The story goes that one day Janapada Kalyani thought to herself, "My eldest brother has renounced the glory of dominion, has become a monk, and has now become the foremost being in the world, even the Buddha. His son, Rahula Kumara, has become a monk. My husband has become a monk. So also has my mother become a nun. Seeing that all these kinsfolk of mine have adopted the religious life, why should I continue any longer to live the house life? I too will become a nun." Accordingly, she went to the community of nuns and became a nun, not at all because of faith, but solely because of love for her kinsfolk. Because of her wondrous beauty, she became known as Rupananda, Beauty Nanda. One day she heard that the teacher had said, "Beauty of form is impermanent, involved in suffering, unreal. So likewise are sensation, perception, the aggregate of mental states, consciousness, impermanent, involved in suffering, unreal." Thereupon she said to herself, "In that case, he would find fault even with my own form, so beautiful to look upon and so fair to see." Therefore, she avoided meeting the teacher face to face. Now the residents of Savatthi, having given alms early in the morning, took upon themselves the obligations of precept day. In the evening, clad in spotless upper garments and bearing garlands and flowers in their hands, they assemble at date of honor to hear the Dhamma. And the community of nuns also, desiring to hear the Dhamma, went to the monastery and heard the Dhamma. And having heard the Dhamma, they entered the city, praising the virtues of the teacher as they entered. For there are four standards of judgment prevailing among persons who dwell together in the world. However, there are very few persons in whom the sight of the Tathagata does not arouse a feeling of satisfaction. Those who judge by what they see look upon the golden-hued body of the Tathagata, adorned with the major marks and the minor marks, and are satisfied with what they see. Those who judge by what they hear listen to the report of the teacher's virtues. Through many hundreds of births, and to his voice endowed with the 8 excellences in the preaching of the Dhamma, and are satisfied with what they hear. Those who judge by austerities are satisfied with his austere robes and so forth. Those whose standard of judgment is righteousness reflect. Such is the uprightness of the professor of the 10 powers. Such is his tranquility. Such is his wisdom. In uprightness and tranquility and wisdom, the Exalted One is without an equal, is without a peer. Thus they also are satisfied. Indeed, those who praise the virtues of the Tathagata lack words wherewith to tell their praises. Rupananda listened to the nuns and the female lay disciples as they recited the praises of the Tathagata, and having listened, said to herself, "In extravagant terms do they tell the praises of my brother. Suppose he were to find fault with my beauty of form during one single day, how much could he say in that length of time? Suppose I were to go with the nuns, and without letting myself be seen, look upon the Tathagata, hear him preach the Dhamma, and then return?" So she said to the nuns, "Today I too will go and hear the Dhamma." Said the nuns, "It has taken a long time to arouse in Rupananda a desire to wait upon the teacher. Today, by reason of her, the teacher will preach the Dhamma with details many and various, and with delighted hearts, taking her with them, they set out. From the moment Rupananda started out, she kept thinking to herself, "I will not let him see who I am." The teacher thought to himself, "Today Rupananda will come to pay her respects to me. What manner of lesson will do her the most good?" As he considered the matter further, he came to the following conclusion: "This woman thinks a great deal of her beauty of form, and is deeply attached to her own person. I will therefore be of advantage to her if I crush out the pride she feels in her beauty of form, by beauty of form itself, even as one draws out one thorn with another thorn. Accordingly, when it was time for her to enter the monastery, the teacher put forth his psychic power and created a young woman about 16 years of age. Surpassing beauty did she possess. She wore crimson garments. She was adorned with all her ornaments, and stood before the teacher with fan in hand, swinging the fan back and forth. Now, both the teacher and Rupananda beheld this woman. As Rupananda entered the monastery with the nuns, she took her place behind the nuns, saluted the teacher with the 5 rests, and sat down among the nuns. Having so done, she surveyed from head to foot the person of the teacher, richly brilliant with the major marks, resplendent with the minor marks, surrounded by a halo, a fathom in extent. Then she saw the phantom of a woman standing near the teacher, and surveyed her face, glorious as the full moon. Having surveyed this woman, she surveyed her own person and compared herself to a crow standing before a royal goose of golden hue. From that moment, she looked upon this phantom created by psychic power. Her eyes rolled back and forth. Oh, how beautiful is her hair! Oh, how beautiful is her forehead! She exclaimed. She was fascinated by the glorious beauty of every part of her body, and she became possessed with intense desire for equal beauty herself. The teacher, observing that she was fascinated by the beauty of the woman, proceeded to teach her the Dhamma. First he transformed the woman from a maiden about 16 years of age to a woman about 20 years of age. Rupananda surveyed her form again, was quickly filled with a feeling of disappointment, and said to herself, "This form is by no means the same as it was before." Gradually the teacher transformed her, first into a woman who had given birth to one child, then into a woman of middle life, finally into a decrepit old woman. Rupananda watched every stage of the transformation, saying to herself, "Now this has disappeared, now that has disappeared." When, however, she saw her transformed into a decrepit old woman, and surveyed her standing there, teeth broken, hair grey, body bent, crooked as a A-shaped rafter, forced to lean on a cane, trembling in every limb. She was filled with utter disgust. Then the teacher caused disease to overmaster the woman. Casting away her cane and her palm leaf fan, she screamed aloud, fell upon the ground and rolled over and over, wallowing in her own urine and excrement. Rupananda looked upon her and was filled with utter disgust. Then the teacher showed the death of that woman. Straightway her body began to bloat. From its 9 wound-like openings oozed pus in the shape of lamp wicks, and also worms. Crows and dogs fell on her and tore her. Rupananda looked and thought, in this very place this woman has come to old age, has come to disease, has come to death. Even so, to this body of mine will come old age, disease and death. Even so, to this body of mine will come old age, disease and death. Thus did she come to behold her own body in its impermanence, and as a result of beholding her own body in its impermanence, she likewise saw her body as involved in suffering and the unreality thereof. Straightway, the 3 characteristics of existence, like houses set on fire, or like carrion tied to her neck, uprose before her, and her mind sprang forth to meditation. The teacher, perceiving that she had beheld her own body in its impermanence, considered within himself, will she or will she not by herself be able to get a firm footing? Straightway he became aware of the following: she will not be able, she must have support from without. Accordingly, out of consideration for her welfare, he taught her the Dhamma by pronouncing the following stanzas. Behold, Nanda, this assemblage of elements called the body, it is diseased, impure, putrid. It oozes and leaks, yet it is desired of simpletons. As is this body, so also was that. As is that body, so also will this body be. Behold the elements in their emptiness. Go not back to the world. Cast away desire for existence, and thou shalt walk in tranquility. Thus, with reference to the nun, Nanda, did the Exalted One pronounce these stanzas, directing her thoughts in a way comfortable to his teaching, Nanda attained the fruit of conversion. Thereupon the teacher, desiring that she should dwell upon the three paths and the three fruits, and desiring to teach her to meditate upon the void, said to her, Nanda, think not that there is reality in this body, for there is not the least reality in this body. This body is but a city of bones, made up by building up 300 bones. So saying, he pronounced the following stanza. It is a city made of bones, plastered with flesh and blood, where lodge old age and death, and pride and deceit. At the conclusion of the lesson, the none attained their hardship. The multitude also profited by the lesson. Book 11, Story 9, Mahadhana. Mahadhana, great wealth, was born at Benares in a treasurer's household worth 80 crores. Now his mother and father thought to themselves, we have a vast store of wealth in our house, and there is no necessity that our son should do anything else than enjoy himself according to his own good pleasure. Accordingly, they had him instructed in singing and in the playing of musical instruments, and that was all the instruction he received. Likewise, in that same city, in a household worth 80 crores of treasure, a daughter also was born. The same thought occurred to her mother and father also, and they had her instructed only in dancing and singing. When the two reached the proper age, they were married with the customary ceremonies. In the course of time, both their mothers and fathers died, and then there were twice 80 crores of treasure in the same house. It was the custom of the treasurer's son to go thrice a day to wait upon the king. One day a company of knaves who lived in that city thought to themselves, if this treasurer's son would only get drunk, it would be a fine thing for us. Let us show him how to get drunk. Accordingly, they procured strong drink, put roast meat, salt, and sugar in the skirts of their clothing, and taking roots and bulbs, seated themselves in a convenient place, watching the path by which he would approach from the royal palace. When they saw him approaching, they began to drink strong drink, placed particles of salt and sugar in their mouths, and took the roots and bulbs in their teeth and chewed them. And they said, live for 100 years, master, treasurer's son. With your help, may we be enabled to eat and drink to our heart's content. Hearing their words, the youth asked the little page who followed him, what are these men drinking? A certain drink, master. Does it taste good? Master, In this world of the living, there is no kind of drink to be had comparable to this. In that case, said the youth, I must have some too. So he caused the page to bring him first a little, and then a little more, and all this he drank. Now, in no long time those knaves discovered that he had taken up the habit of drinking. Then they flocked around him as time went on, and the crowd that surrounded him increased in numbers. He would spend 100 or 200 pieces of money at a time on strong drink. It became a habit with him, after a time, wherever he happened to be, to pile up a heap of coins and call out as he drank, take this coin and fetch me flowers. Take this coin and fetch me perfumes. This man is clever at dicing, and this man at dancing, and this man at singing, and this man at the playing of musical instruments. Give this man 1,000, and this man 2,000. Thus did he spend his money. In no long time he squandered all the 80 crores of treasure that formerly belonged to him. Then those knaves said to him, Master, your wealth is all spent. Has my wife no money? Yes, master, she has. Well, then fetch that too. And he spent his wife's money in precisely the same way. As time went on, he sold his fields and his parks and his gardens and his carriages. He even disposed of the vessels he used at meals, of his coverlets and his cloaks and couches. All that belonged to him he sold, and the proceeds he spent in riotous living. In old age he sold his house, the property of his family, and those to whom he sold his house took possession of it and straightway put him out. Thereupon, taking his wife with him, he found lodging near the house wall of other people's houses. With a broken potsherd in his hand, he would go about begging alms. Finally, he began to eat the leavings of other people's food. One day he stood at the door of a rest house, receiving leavings of food presented to him by novices and probationers. The teacher saw him and smiled. Thereupon Elder Ananda asked him why he smiled. The teacher explained the reason for his smile by saying, Ananda, just look here at great wealth, the treasurer's son. In this very city he has squandered twice 80 crores of treasure. Now, accompanied by his wife, he is begging alms. For if in the prime of life this man had not squandered his wealth, but had applied himself to business, he would have become the principal treasurer in this very city. And if he had retired from the world and become a monk, he would have attained arahatship, and his wife would have been established in the fruit of the third path, if in middle life he had not squandered his wealth, but had applied himself to business. He would have become the second treasurer. And if he had retired from the world and become a monk, he would have attained the fruit of the third path, and his wife would have been established in the fruit of the second path. If in the latter years of his life he had not squandered his wealth, but had applied himself to business, he would have become the third treasurer. And if he had retired from the world and become a monk, he would have attained the fruit of the second path, and his wife would have been established in the fruit of conversion. But now he has fallen away from the wealth of a layman, and he has likewise fallen away from the estate of a monk. He has become like a heron in a dried up pond. So saying, he pronounced the following stanzas. They that have not led the holy life, they that have not obtained wealth in time of youth, perish like worn-out herons in the pond, from which the fish have disappeared. They that have not led the holy life, they that have not obtained wealth in time of youth, lie like worn-out bows, bewailing the times that are past. Book 12, Story 4, Kumara Kassapa and his mother. The story goes that Kumara Kassapa's mother was the daughter of a treasurer in the city of Rajagar. From the time she reached the age of reason, she sought permission to become a monk. But although she asked her mother and father again and again, she failed to obtain from them permission to enter the order. On reaching marriageable age, she married, went to live in her husband's household, and amid the cares of the household life, proved a devoted wife. Now in no long time she conceived a child in her womb, but she knew not that she was pregnant. Winning the favor of her husband, she asked to enter the order and obtained his permission to do so. So, not knowing that she was pregnant, he conducted her with great pomp to the community of nuns and obtained for her admission to the order at the hands of the nuns belonging to this faction of Devadatta. After a time the nuns observed that she was pregnant. Said they, "What does this mean?" She replied, "Noble sisters, I know not what this may mean, but this I know for certain, that my chastity is unimpaired." So the nuns conducted her to Devadatta and said to him, "This nun retired from the world through faith. We know not when she conceived this child. What therefore shall we do?" Devadatta thought only, Let not reproach be cast upon the nuns who receive instruction from me. Therefore he said, expel her from the order. When the young nun heard those words of Devadatta, she said, noble sisters, do not ruin me. But I did not retire from the world at the instance of Devadatta. Come, conduct me to the teacher at Jetavana. Accordingly they took her with them, went to Jetavana, and laid the matter before the teacher. Now, although the teacher knew that she had conceived the child when she was living in the world, yet, for the purpose of disapproving the false accusation, he summoned King Passanadi Kosala, Maha Pindika, Kulla Pindika, Visakha, the female lay disciple, and other great personages, giving the following orders to the elder Upali. Go, clear this young woman of the charge against her in the midst of the fourfold assembly. The elder caused Visakha to be summoned before the king and put the case in her hands. Visakha caused a curtain to be drawn about the young woman, and within the curtain made an examination of her hands, feet, navel, belly, and extremities. Then she computed the months and days, and perceiving that the young woman had conceived the child when she was living in the world, informed the elder of the fact. Thereupon the elder proclaimed her innocence in the midst of the fourfold assembly. After a time she brought forth a son, strong and mighty, for whom she had prayed at the feet of the Buddha, Padumattara. Now one day as the king was passing near the community of nuns, he heard the cry of her child. What is that? He asked. Your Majesty, they replied, a certain nun has given birth to a child. That is the sound of his voice. So the king took the boy to his own house and committed him to the care of his daughters. On the day appointed for the naming of the child, they gave him the name Kassapa. But because he had been brought up in princely state, all the people called him Prince Kassapa, Kumara Kassapa. One day, on the playground, he struck some boys. They cried out, we have been struck by that motherless, fatherless. Kassapa immediately ran to the king and said to him, Your Majesty, they say I have neither mother nor father. Tell me who my mother is. The king pointed to his daughters and said, There are your mothers. But the boy replied, I have not so many mothers as that. By right, I should have only one mother. Tell me who she is. The king thought to himself, it is impossible to deceive this boy. So he said to him, Dear boy, your mother is a nun, and I brought you here from the nuns' convent. No more than this was needed to arouse deep emotion in the heart of the boy. He immediately said, Dear friend, obtain for me admission to the order. Very well, dear boy, replied the king. So with great pomp he conducted the boy to the teacher and had him admitted to the order. After he had made his full profession, he became known as Elder Kumara Kassapa. Receiving a subject of meditation from the teacher, he retired to the forest. But although he strove and struggled with might and main, he was unable to develop specific attainment. So, thinking to himself, I will obtain a subject of meditation from the teacher better suited to my needs. He returned to the teacher and took up his residence in Anda Grove. Now a monk who, in the time of the Buddha Kassapa, had performed his meditations alone and had attained the fruit of the third path and had been reborn in the world of Brahma, returned from the world of Brahma and asked Kumara Kassapa 15 questions, but sent him away with the words, none other than the teacher can resolve these questions. Go to the teacher and get their solution. Kumara Kassapa did so, and at the end of the answers to the questions, attained arahatship. Now, for 12 years following Kassapa's retirement from the world, tears streamed from the eyes of the nun, his mother. With face wet with the tears she shed because of the suffering caused her by separation from her son, she went on her rounds for alms. One day she saw her son, the elder, in the street, crying out, my son, my son. She ran to meet him and, falling at his feet, rolled on the ground. Her robe was wet as she rose from the ground and took the elder in her arms. The elder thought to himself, if she receives kindly words from me, it will mean her undoing. Therefore I will speak harshly to her. So he said to her, what are you about? Can you not do away with human affection? Thought the mother, how like a brigand he talks. And she said to him, dear son, what did you say? But he only repeated again the same harsh words. Thereupon she thought, ah, because of him I have not been able to restrain my tears for 12 years. But he has hardened his heart towards me. Why should I have anything to do with him any more? And then and there, uprooting affection for her son, on that very day she attained arahatship. Some time afterwards, the monks began a discussion in the hall of truth. Devadatta all but destroyed Kumara Kassapa, endowed with the faculties requisite for conversion, and the nun his mother, but the teacher became their refuge. Oh, how great is the compassion of the Buddhas for the world! At that moment the teacher approached and asked them, monks, what subject are you discussing now, as you sit here all gathered together? When they told him, he said, monks, this is not the first time I have been their refuge and defense. I was their refuge in a previous state of existence also. So saying, he related the Nigroda Jataka in detail. Follow only the banyan deer, abide not with the branch. Better death with the banyan deer than life with the branch. Then said the teacher, identifying the characters in the Jataka. At that time the branch deer was Devadatta, and the herd of the branch deer was the retinue of Devadatta. The doe that reached her turn was the nun. Her fawn was Kumara Kassapa, and the banyan deer, the king of the deer, who offered his life for the doe with young, was I myself. And praising the nun for uprooting affection for her son, and for establishing herself as a refuge for herself, he said, monks, inasmuch as the goal of heaven, or the goal of the paths, which one man has earned for himself, cannot become the property of another. Therefore, self is the refuge for self. How can one man be the refuge of another? So saying, he pronounced the following stanza. Self is the refuge of self. Indeed, how can one man be the refuge of another? For by his own well-tamed self, a man gains for himself a refuge which is hard to gain. Recorded by Mr. Lingam of Kuala Lumpur for Reverend High of Penang.